All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the American Littoral Society Zoom meeting this afternoon. We're really happy that all of you are joining us this morning.
Judy,
We have Don Riepe. He's going to be doing a great presentation today.
how do you know?
Admitting more people. I always know. I'm just admitting more people as we go.
My sister, Linda McCartney. My baby sister.
And this meeting is live on Facebook as well for all the folks tuning in who are unable to join the Zoom meeting, which may happen as we may go over capacity.
There's Gina and Mary. Hi, Gina and Mary. My trip partners. We traveled many places together. Hi, Peggy. Peggy and I go way back, 1982.
Even before, John. I think
Before. That's right.
1980.
Right, that with New York City Audubon, the case against the Goethals Pond, right?
That's it.
All right.
What a great memory with all the information
No,
you store.
I don't know what I did yesterday, but I can, 100 years ago, I know. And Gail, hi Gail, one of our volunteers at the refuge.
How are you?
Eileen Kennedy, there you are.
I'm just admitting a few more people. Let's give it another minute.
So I guess you told people if they have a question to go on the chat, you know how to do that.
Yeah, I think while you're presenting, towards the end, if anyone has anything additional they want to ask Don, put that in the chat. I'll be watching the chat to see who has a question or fun comment.
Right, you can interrupt, I guess,
Yeah.
if need be. We'll keep this informal.
Oh, Alfred Saber says greetings from Egypt.
From Egypt,
Oh, nice. Hi, Alfred.
we're going international.
That's
Hello, hello from Egypt. How are you?
cool. Wow.
What time is it there? Like 2 in the morning?
Now it's 6 p.m. in Egypt.
Oh, okay.
Nice to meet all of you.
What's the temperature?
Yeah. The temperature now is about 13 degrees.
15.
Oh.
I'm very interested
Okay,
for
it's Celsius, right?
the talk of today.
Right.
Thank you very much.
Wow, we got 71 in already. Nice.
Wow. Should we take our audio?
Yes, anyone aside from myself and Don, please mute your audio. We're actually going to get started right about now. So Don, I'm going to spotlight your video. Do you want to start your screen share?
Okay, share screen. Share. Okay. That good?
That's great. Yeah. And now you'll want to do the slideshow.
Slideshow. Okay, got it. Slideshow. And then I go to.
Let's get to the slideshow first, let's say. Click that. Yeah. And then
Alright.
you want to do from beginning.
I'm beginning.
That's right.
Ooh.
Just hit the backspace, you'll be fine.
So I go back. Yeah, that's
There you go.
so. You ready? Everybody in?
I believe we're ready. The show is
Okay.
already done.
Well, welcome everyone. Happy New Year to those who I haven't seen since then. And welcome to Downtown Broad Channel, in my humble abode here. Probably one of the coldest days of the year, and it's going to get colder. Actually, the coldest time of year is usually this week coming for the Northeast here. And later on in the week, temperatures are supposed to drop down to 21 or so, but it's not so bad, not so bad. But at least the days are getting longer. Sunset tonight is 5:02. So that's at least it's over half an hour from the shortest day of the year, or the longest night, December 21st. So we're working our way back from that, and hopefully from other things like the pandemic. This is what my dock normally looks like on a cold winter. If we get a good, really period of extended cold and the whole bay freezes up, I can actually walk out into the refuge. You know, first I make sure the ice is about a foot thick before I do that. But that's my dock from high tide splashing water on it. Okay. This is the refuge when we have a little snowfall. We haven't had much this year yet, but I think February is usually the worst. We usually get the heaviest snows in February, so that may be coming. Not great. I mean, when I was a kid, I loved it, but now I don't like it as much. I have to shovel my car out. But actually, it's good for plants and animals. It was, all the small mammals will be under the snow, and where temperatures can be as 30 degrees warmer than the ambient air temperatures. I love this shot. This is Johann Schumacher's photo of Forest Park, Queens. One of our big parks with lots of mature oaks and hickories and tulip trees. A great place to visit, especially in spring, when you can visit the waterhole and all the warblers are coming through. And this is what I like to do. I'm walking late afternoon at the refuge and I see that shadow. It reminds me of Emily Dickinson, all right? I'm a former English teacher, so I love poetry and I love Emily Dickinson's short poems. And this one kind of represents this time of year, the long shadow on the lawn, indicative that suns go down. The notice to the startled grass that darkness is about to pass. Poems about death, poets always dwell on death, but I love that little poem. And just a word to the wise who might want to be thinking about doubling down over the next month on our protection, especially if these variants start working, they're becoming more prevalent in the city here. So I made this little, I took a picture of the common yellowthroat, which we have nesting at the refuge. Occasionally one leaving over winter, but they have that little mask, so I put that there. And I like the idea, instead of telling people, oh, wear you, say respect our doctors and nurses and wear a mask. In fact, I recommend you wear double up on your masks this next month if you're going out anywhere into a big shopping center or something. And get your shot if you can. Well, anyway, this time of year is a time of waterfowl, and these are snow geese. And there used to be two species. The darker so-called blue goose used to be a separate species, but they lumped them all together. It's just a color morph or form of the snow goose. And the one on the bottom is a juvenile blue goose, or the dark morph of the snow geese. But they're not that common here. A good place to see them is down at Blackwater National Wildlife Refuge in Maryland. Is a good place if you want to see lots of the blue variant. This is a photo taken at Chincoteague, Assateague Island National Seashore, Chincoteague National Wildlife Refuge in Virginia, where they normally get about 20,000 or more snow geese. A little north of that, Bombay Hook Refuge. Sometimes I've been there when they've had 70,000 snow geese. It was just an incredible spectacle. But here at Jamaica Bay, we have about 1,000. And that's fine with me because the snow geese spend all their time in the bay and they eat almost exclusively the Spartina grass. And we've been planting all that Spartina grass to try to restore the marshes. So if we had huge numbers of snow geese, it would be detrimental to the marsh, but we can handle 1,000. And they're out there now. I mean, I see a little patch of them out over in Yellow Bar Hassock, right from my kitchen here. The most common bird of winter here is the brant goose. This is the Atlantic brant. There's also a western variety of brant, the black brant. Sometimes you'll find one mixed in with the Atlantic brant here, which birders like to do. And but these geese come here in roughly in mid-October. And I estimated this year when I was out on my boat, about 10,000 brant are here in the bay right now. So big numbers. Most of their population, they breed up in Greenland, northern Greenland, Baffin Island. So they're above the Arctic Circle. They come down here in the winter. This is like Miami Beach to them. This is nothing. And they populate all the marshes on Long Island, all the way down the coast, maybe into North Carolina. And that's the major population. This is a little video on how they feed. They actually feed something like the shoveler ducks. They get and they spin in a big circle. And I think what they're doing is they're creating a vortex to bring up pieces of the sea lettuce from the bottom up to the top. And there's the little buffle heads you see mixed in with them. And they feed these little patches. Notice on the left of the screen, you'll also see a couple little horned grebes coming in. There's one there, there's two at the very end. So they're all in this little feeding cluster. And sometimes I'll see several clusters out in the bay. Whoop, no, we don't want to do that. Okay.
Space bar.
Yeah, I think that's right. Oh, dude, go back. All right. This is the winter duck in Jamaica Bay in the biggest numbers, not the biggest numbers necessarily, but in the marshes. This is a true winter marsh duck. It's a large duck. It's called the black duck. All right, obviously dark brown, chocolate brown, and in the air it looks almost black. And the way to identify it, those of you who've been on my trips, is part of my shtick here. If you look at the bird taking off, you see the silver underneath the wings. That's the way you identify it. And now you'll always remember this. Every black duck has a silver lining, okay? As well as purple. The speculum is how we identify a lot of waterfowl in the air. So if it had white borders on both sides, it would be a mallard. But here's the black duck. And you can see they're well adapted to winter. You know, they have their down jackets on, trap a lot of air, sitting right on the ice. And another very common duck here is the cute little buffle heads. These are three drakes taking off. And you find them, a good place to see them actually is in Sheepshead Bay. Sometimes they come in there. They're pretty wary. When I'm out my boat, I can't get that close to them. Here's another little video. This is taken in Sheepshead Bay, right from that little bridge you cross, and they're right below me. That's a female buffle head. And here's the drake on the left and the hen on the right. These are diving ducks as opposed to the dabblers like the mallards and black ducks. And there they go, they're diving. Okay. No, next. This used to be the most common duck in the bay. And years ago, I'm going back 30 years now, in Jamaica Bay Refuge at the East Pond, you'd have 10,000. They would populate that whole pond. It was incredible to see. These are the Arctic Scorp, or greater Scorp for the most part. There are some lessers in there, the ones with the purplish heads. But the ones with the greenish sheen are the drake greater Scorps. And they're called greater because when they're flying, the white goes beyond the elbow of the wing in the greater and stops right at the elbow for the lesser. But I took this in Dead Horse Bay about a dozen years ago. There was about 8,000 in a huge cluster, and it was really interesting to see. Here they are taking off. This is the drake of the lesser Scorp. Again, I photographed this at Sheepshead Bay. If you go to Sheepshead Bay in winter, you'll see lots of swans and ducks and geese there. People feed them, and they've become quite tame. And you can get good photos of them, especially from that little bridge that toward the far end of the bay, which connects both sides. This is a photograph taken by Lisa Shepke. Lisa's with us on the program today. Excellent birder. Lisa's our New York State beach cleanup coordinator, and she also is taking charge of the fishing line program. We're taking discarded fishing line. We're putting up a post around for them, for people to discard them. And that's a program that's supported by the Jamaica Bay Rockaway Parks Conservancy, which is Alex Zablocki's group, also here right in the bay. So that's the drake, a beautiful drake or male wood duck, and a female. A good place to see these, obviously in winter, but maybe in spring and fall, even more, is Big John's Pond. They like these quiet little ponds and more wooded areas rather than the big open areas like a lot of other ducks. Here's a handsome duck. This is the long-tailed duck. When I was a kid, we called them old squaws, but that was considered a derogatory Indian term. So now it's American Indian. So this is now called the long-tailed duck, and that's a drake. And good place to see them. They usually don't come into the bay as much as they stay right in the inlet to the bay, right off Roxbury and Breezy Point and Coney Island, or right off the Rockaway beach area, just beyond the surf. You'll see these long-tailed ducks. And one of my favorite ducks, and maybe even the handsomest duck, is the Harlequin Duck, with all those variety of colors to break up their pattern. And interestingly, they have little eye spots, little eye, one on each side. And I came across a sleeping one in Iceland, and it looked like it was looking at me. And lots of animals have these eye spots in the back of their heads, like kestrels have them. Butterflies have eye spots. Even tigers have eye spots in the back of their ears. So, because a lot of animals, if they're going to attack anything, they'll attack from the rear. They try to work their way around. They don't attack head on, because that's a little more dangerous. But this is a defensive against that, I imagine. A good place to see harlequins is Point Lookout along the Atlantic Beach Peninsula, near Jones Beach, West End 2 on the jetty. Or I like to go down to Barnegat Lighthouse in New Jersey, the terminal jetty there, right by the lighthouse. Sometimes you see good numbers of them, along with the long-tailed ducks. And here they are. These are the drakes or males, and the female on the left. Notice it's standing right on a slippery slope there with all these little mussels. So a lot of these ducks rely on a lot of the shellfish that we have, such as in Jamaica Bay, we have tons of ribbed mussels. So when the tide comes in, these are covered, and many of these ducks like to feed on them. The gulls also will feed on them. So it's a great resource. And they're also important to the health of the marsh. They hold the marsh together. So here's a marsh in winter. Actually, this marsh has been clipped, it looks like. So this might be an early spring shot, I think so, where you can see the Spartina is just coming up, but it's been trimmed or grazed upon by the brant geese. They don't rip it out like the snow geese do, but they graze on it, and it'll grow up during the rest of the year. The ribbed mussels are really not the edible mussel for us, not the blue mussel, which is good. Otherwise, we'd be taking them out and ripping them out of the bay. So it's good to have something that we leave alone. These ducks I just see right out here, just the other day, right off my dock here. This is the hooded merganza, the drake on the right, and on the center and left are the females. They look like little brush tops or paint brushes in the back. Now they have a long, thin bill with a serrated edge for catching fish. So they dive down, but they hunt primarily fish. Of course, common eiders, not common here. Rarely see them in Jamaica Bay, but we can see them right off shore, Breezy Point, Rockaway. And out east, if you go out to Montauk, you see a good numbers of them. This little bird was brought to me a week or two ago. Joan Flynn, I believe that's who brought it to me, found it on the beach and said, you know, what's this little bird? She said, a common murre. When she was describing it, you know, I said, well, how big is it? She said, oh, it's just a little handful. I said, no, it's a dovekey. So this year, quite a few dovekies, which are pelagic birds that never come to land except to breed. And when they breed on the rocky ledges. So they kind of jump out to take flight. If they're on land, they can't take off. So I picked them up. So I gave them to Bobby Horvath, one of our local rehabilitators. And he fed it some goldfish to strengthen it before re-releasing it. But when you re-release them, you have to put them out in the water because they can't take off from land. So they were being blown ashore by storms, or maybe they were weakened. Maybe the food supply wasn't that great. This is a famous common loon that I put in many shows that I photographed out at Montauk, at Lazy Point, where Carl Safina lives. You know, Carl Safina, the great nature writer. And it was frozen in the ice, but we couldn't get to it because the shoreline ice was broken. We couldn't walk out on it. So we went to Carl, and he said he'd come out and, you know, put on waders and go out and get it. So he rescued it. This is a common loon. Normally they're offshore. If you look at the Rockaways and you look offshore, you might see the common loons, or even in Jamaica Bay in the deeper water. In the shallower waters, you might see the red-throated loon, which is a sleeker, handsomer loon. And it has a little thinner bill, but it's always that little upturn that has, rather than the straight out of the common loon. So this is a handsome bird of winter. And I photographed this at Gateway Marina. It was in very close, you know, near where I had my boat. But a good place to see them is right, even at Montauk, you go out there, right in the surf. I've had one 10 feet, I could see the whole body of it coming up a foot of water. And we do have horned grebes in the bay. It's a kind of a delicate little bird, a little thin neck. In Iceland, it's known as a Slavonian grebe, but here we call it the horned grebes. It has little feather tufts later on in its spring plumage. Because everybody wants to see the rarer grebe here, the red-throated grebe, or the red-necked grebe, I'm sorry, the red-necked grebe, which I photographed right off my dock here. But they're pretty uncommon, but you can see them. If you go out to, say, Breezy Point, you might see one there. Of course, everybody loves to see owls in the winter. Now, I drive along, and this is what most people see out there. Oh, a snowy owl. Usually, they turn out to be plastic bags, like this one, which I docked it up in Photoshop there. But we do get them. They do exist. I photographed these two at Breezy Point. I think it was 2012. We had a huge eruption from up in the Arctic. Now, up in the Arctic, you have boom and bust populations. One of the classic examples is the lynx and the snowshoe hare. When the snowshoe hare's populations increase, the lynx populations increase behind. When the hare populations decline, the lynx populations decline. So you have this roller coaster, boom and bust type of situation. So what happens up there, if they have a good breeding year with lots of lemmings and rodents, they'll produce more young because they can feed more and more can fledge. But at the end of the year, the end of the season, the young leave and they have to travel out, you know, like go west, young man. They try to find new areas and they go off in all directions, and many of them come south and they hit the coast, not going to go out over the open ocean. So they populate or hang around all the big dunes on Long Island. Unfortunately, they also like airports. And I think that year, several were at Kennedy Airport and they were trying to harass them, but they don't, many of these birds have not seen people before, ever. You know, the one on the left, I was 20 feet away from, and he was didn't seem threatened at all. So what I do when I see these birds, I'm going to take a picture. I kneel down, make myself small. The smaller you make yourself, the closer you can get to them without disturbing them, really. So it's a beautiful young, and the juveniles usually have juveniles and females have the heavy markings, black markings. The males, on the other hand, are almost pure white. This guy I photographed at Floyd Bennett Field, right from my car. It was in the grassland areas. We have a big open grassland there. And I rolled the window down. What I typically do, I saw the owl ahead of me on the right, slow down. I rolled the window down, got my camera ready, and just eased up to him. As long as you don't make motion. You can talk if you want, they don't care about that, but if you make motion, that's what startles them. And late afternoon, so I got beautiful lighting on this bird. So this is either a juvenile or a female snowy owl, one of those Arctic birds that we see. This year, there are about 3 of them at Jones Beach, West End too. So the way to see these birds is you drive to Jones Beach, Meadowbrook Parkway, go to West End 2 parking area, get out of your car and look for a crowd of photographers. That's where the bird is. So, and they seem to be, you know, as long as people are respectful and don't try to flush them or make them fly, they'll sit quietly and they get used to people. And they hunt during the day too, because where they're from, you have in the summertime, it's almost 24 hours of daylight. So this would be a male. This would be an adult male. This was taken at Breezy Point just last year, right along the shoreline. What do they eat? How do they survive winter? All right. Aside from having all that, you know, insulated feathers and which traps air in them, being born in the wild is another thing. You acclimate. A friend of mine swims almost every day in the winter, goes out in the ocean. And he said, since he's been doing that, he's really acclimated to winter. He used to get a lot of colds. He doesn't get colds anymore. So you're acclimating your body. So these animals are acclimated to the outdoors. So for us, you know, I'd die in 20 minutes out in these areas, but they do well. This is the Blacktail Jackrabbit on the left. Now that's a bird that was at Kennedy Airport for years. Blacktail Jackrabbits. It's a Western species, and it might have been brought there, you know, pre-Kennedy. Those are big open areas, and I used to go there as a kid hunting with our bow and arrows, try to shoot at anything. And I think people brought in, or may have brought in, Blacktail Jackrabbits for that purpose. I don't know, or maybe they escaped from cargo somehow. But anyway, they were living out in the big open areas of Kennedy Airport for many, many years. And that might be a reason why the snowy owls were there too, because they had this, you know, great food resource. But the Department of Agriculture and the biologists out there are trying to make the airport less attractive to birds, right? Because birds and planes don't mix, we know that. So they're trying to keep these predators off there. So they're removing the jackrabbits. But I thought it was interesting. This is at Kennedy Airport. And the squirrel would be another item that would be on their menu. Although squirrels are more in the wooded areas, and there'd be more a feast for a red-tailed hawk, say. Not so much snowy owl, because most of the time they don't go into the wooded areas. They stay out in the open areas. And the bottom, a chipmunk getting ready for winter, taking all the seeds in his pouch, bringing them down underneath. And chipmunks will come out on warm days in the winter. So they're not true hibernators like the woodchuck, for example, which, you know, goes into a state of torpor where heartbeats go down, way down, the body temperatures go almost down to ambient levels. But the chipmunks will, you know, go into a deep sleep and wake up and come out and feed in winter. Aha. The Norway rat, okay. I had one in my dock this summer. I have a video to show them. My cat was standing by the door watching this rat feed on some seed I had out there. But the cat was, I'm not going to mess with that rat, I don't think. When the rat started to run away, that's when my cat ran after him. But, you know, it was only just a scare chase. He wasn't trying to catch it. But the red-tailed hawk, by the way, red tails are nesting in every large in every borough of New York City. So some of these large predators like red-tailed hawks, peregrine falcons, kestrels, they're with us year round. And they've adapted to urban areas, to urban parks. Red tails in Manhattan, sometimes people are walking the sidewalk and there's one 10 feet away eating a pigeon. You know? But the great horned owl is another bird that's here year round. And this time of year, winter, is when they start nesting. So in January, February, they're nesting. They're getting into their nesting season. In the last 3 years, I've seen them in Broad Channel. We have never seen a great horned owl for many, many years. Even at the refuge, it's extremely rare to see a great horned owl. Now there's a pair nesting at the refuge. So they're expanding their range. It may also be due to the fact that the refuge is growing up a little bit. We have a little more wooded areas, which they like. But great horns are in every major park in New York City. And I believe in Staten Island, they have about 7 nesting pairs. So this is the tiger of the woods. This is a serious predator. They take large prey. But these guys were hooting outside in Broad Channel. 2 o'clock in the morning, I heard a great horned owl hooting. What is that? Great horned owl in Broad Channel? There's no woods here. He was sitting on my neighbor's dock. The reason he came, I realized my neighbor has one of those fake owls on top of his roof. So this owl was coming and hooting at it, get out of my territory. This is one of our favorite little winter birds here, the saw-whet owl. Saw-whet, meaning the sharpening sound of sharpening a saw. Since I have never sharpened a saw and I've never been in their breeding territory, I do not know what the sound is. I'd have to, Google it, I guess. But this is a cute little guy that was photographed in Long Beach by my friend Dennis Guiney. He was just out walking on the sidewalk, and there was one in the tree right nearby. They're usually in the coniferous trees, in pines and cedars. They must hide during the day. They will be eaten by Cooper's hawks, for example, if they're out in the open. So they hide during the day. At night, they come out and they feed on these little white-footed mice. Years ago in the 70s and early 80s, we had mostly meadow voles I've seen at the refuge. Something ran across the trail as a meadow vole. Now I'm seeing more and more white-footed mice. So things aren't static. Populations are always changing according to changing conditions, climate conditions, habitat conditions. But these guys were underneath a board that I picked up and looked under. There's a whole little cluster of them there. And of course, my favorite bird in all the world is the barn owl. We've been managing for them for the last 30 years. They are here year round. You can actually see one pretty easily at the refuge out around the West Pond. There's a box that my dentist friend, John Potenti, put up over 20 years ago. And, we checked it the first few years. It didn't have anything happening. Then it grew up, everything grew up around it. I kind of forgot about it. And after Sandy storm, when a lot of the vegetation died after, the salt water came in, started seeing the owl looking out of the box. So we checked it. Last year they had 2 young, which we banned. But what I realized, in the box, there was over 1.5 feet of pellets. So most of the box was taken up by pellets, with the remains of the rats and mice that they've been feeding on for many years, unbeknownst to us. So we do have a pretty good population of barn owls. They are a species of concern. Unfortunately, they too get hit at Kennedy Airport. They fly low over the runway, so they might get knocked down by jet wash or killed that way. But they're hanging on, and we've been putting up boxes in some of the remote areas of the refuge. One of the popular boxes at the end of Big John's Pond, which traditionally had them nesting there. And later on in the season, usually by mid-May or late May, you'll see the young looking out. But this is what we do. We put up those boxes. It's a big project, a big 4x4. with a predator guard on it to keep the raccoons from climbing up and getting into it. We also put a little tree swallow box on them or a wren box, and they're all taken. And there's the big owl box there. And that's Chris Natareski on the right. He's the bandit for New York City DEP that has been working with us for 30 years. So I keep saying we have the largest population of barn owls in all of New York State right here in Jamaica Bay. Now, I don't know that, but I keep saying it, hoping that someday someone will refute it. No one's refuted it, so I'll keep saying it. But I know we have a pretty good population. This year I had at least 5 nesting pair out in the bay. And these 2 owls have different habits. These are the short-eared on the left with the little ear tufts. Not really, these are not ears, by the way. These are all feathered tufted. And on the right, the more secretive long-eared owl, which I haven't seen at the refuge for many years. Years ago, we used to get them every winter. Short-eared owls used to nest at the Kennedy Airport and also at the Floyd Bennett Field. Their populations have declined somewhat. But a few years back, the long-eared owls, and I guess a good place to see them is Central Park. There were 4 of them roosting about 10 feet above the ground in a tree right next to a bench. You could sit on the bench and look at them during the day. And people would come to a dusk to see them fly out. But the short-eared owls, you'd have to go to a good place to see them, might be Shirley Chisholm State Park, which is the old Fountain and Penn Avenue landfills off the Belt Parkway. So now that area has a lot of open area with tall weeds, grasses. And they like to stay there during the day. And they come out sometimes in the late afternoon, especially on cloudy days, you might see them. There's my buddy Carol Borneman, the chief ranger at Cumberland Gap, who was my co-leader on many field trips for many years. She's down in Florida, and she's holding a screech owl, the red phase. There's red and white. Now, I've never had a screech owl in Jamaica Bay, but you do get them in all the big parks, especially Staten Island. I think they're more prevalent there. Maybe the Bronx. Queens probably has some. Long Island has them. Connecticut State Park, places like that. So they need wooded areas and not big tracts of land and to survive. So that's Hootie, the little screech owl at the Okeechobee Nature Center in Florida. And on the right is the late great Len Susi, who started the Raptor Trust in New Jersey, one of the best rehabilitation centers in the Northeast. And even had an area where they x-rayed and they operated on birds. They set bones and they did, lots of very difficult operations on birds. And every year they will take in all the young birds of the year, and they have big cages everywhere with almost all the different raptors of the Northeast, including this barred owl. I have never seen a barred owl in Jamaica Bay. That's another one that's missing here. But they are in Central Park right now. There's at least 2 of them that have been very popular. People get to see them quite easily. But I see them down south. It's a bird of the south, the deep woods. And you'll hear them hooting late afternoon out there. It's a beautiful owl. Again, wrong habitat here. They like more wooded areas, not the open areas of Jamaica Bay. These 2 guys we've seen on the left is Boreal Owl. This one, I believe, was photographed upstate by Lisa Shepke. But we did have one in Central Park a dozen years ago. It was in a big pine or fir tree. A whole bunch of people standing on the path looking. And people would walk by and say, "What are you looking at?" So I would say, "Oh, a leopard escaped from the zoo and he's up in the tree." They would, "Oh, wait. It was a boreal owl." It was hard to see, but this is a real northern bird. You want to see these birds, go to Canada. Go to northern New York State or Canada. One year we had a big influx of great gray owls. I took this photo up in Ottawa, Canada, from my car during a snowstorm. This owl was sitting atop 10-foot fence, and just looking around, looking down. There was a good foot of snow there. And all of a sudden he dove off that fence head first into the snow. And he came up with a meadow vole. Incredible hearing. If you look at the facial structure of these owls, it's like a big parabolic sound container. So they can absorb even traces of sound. You know, the barn owl in particular has one of the greatest hearings that can detect in almost total darkness a little mouse scurrying in the leaf litter. But great gray owls, we do have a record on Long Island back in the 70s. I drove out to, where was it? Target Rock Refuge. And I heard one was out there. And my friend Jim Ash told me about it. I drove out, I saw Jim on the side of the road. I drove it, hey Jim, how you? So where's the owls? Oh, he's right there. He was sitting on a Norway rat in his talons. That was the only report of great gray. But it's possible if there's a real downturn of prey items. It's not so much cold. These birds can survive the cold, but they need to be able to feed. If rodent populations crash, their populations crash, or they move south to more open areas. So someday we'll get them back. So what to do with those? Now, when I worked at the Jamaica Bay Refuge for 25 years, I planted in about 5 areas of dense conifers. And we used to have them, you know, when I first started in 74 as a seasonal ranger, we'd have saw-whet owls right near the visitor center and some of the pines and cedars. But those Japanese black pines died from a fungal disease and a bark beetle. So I started planting pitch pine and red cedar in clusters at different areas of the refuge, mostly away from the center. And there's at least 5 areas where I have nice little dense clusters. So these will support winter habitat for owls, but also for lots of other species of birds to get out of a snowstorm, to spend night, to nest, to build a nest. So that's one of the management options for them. Some of the more open field birds that we have here, on the left is a kestrel. This is a female. She's got the kind of ruddy back. The males have more of a slate gray. But these owls, they have the teardrop. You look at the eye in relation to the head of this bird. Huge eye, great vision, binocular vision. And they have this dark featheration, which presumably helps with glare, but also dark feathers are stronger than the lighter colored feathers. And where they're swooping down, in the case of a peregrine falcon, which can dive at speeds approaching 200 miles an hour, that's a lot of stress on them. They even have a little baffle in the nose, you can't see it here, so that you know, they can breathe at that great speed. So they're adapted for speed. These are falcons, although the kestrels are a little small, what we used to call sparrowhawks, but the American kestrels feed mostly in the summertime on insects like grasshoppers and things. In the winter, they will feed on small birds and mice. And one way, in the summer, usually you see them hovering. You see a bird hovering over an open field. That's probably a kestrel. The falcons don't hover. They get way up above and they dive down. The bird on the right, this adult peregrine, probably a female, judging from the size. Females are larger than males. I've seen this bird for 20 years. I don't think it's the same bird. It all roosting underneath the Cross Bay Bridge when I go through with my boat. They're used to boat traffic. And these birds are nesting on every bridge from here all the way up to Albany, the Peregrine Falcons. And here's one I took from the top of the Brooklyn side spire, the Verrazano Bridge. I got a chance to go up there with Chris Nadareski. It's huge. You would think it's oh my God, I'm not going to go up there, but it's quite wide. It's about 25 feet wide. So I didn't feel uncomfortable up there. And the peregrines were nesting in a box he had put up there. So that's a shot taken right from the Verrazano Bridge, the top of the Verrazano Bridge. On the right is the merlin. Now merlins, I've seen them nesting in Iceland and I guess north of here, but they do spend winter out here. And this individual, I believe is the same individual, has been coming to the same tree in winter around the far side of the West Pond. You go around late afternoon, I guess after he's finished hunting for the day, sits in that one tree. And sometimes there's two. I guess he brings his mate or she brings her mate. But the Merlins specialize in birds, as do peregrines and Cooper's hawks and other accipiters. But, you know, it's not large, a little bigger than a kestrel. But I've seen them chase shorebirds for 10 minutes before they actually tire them out and catch them. And recent raptor to our mix here is the bald eagle. This photo I took last winter in the eastern side of Jamaica Bay, and typically wanted to have the city in the background. So this is telephoto lens. They're not close to New York City. The telephoto brings the background in, kind of flattens everything out. But this pair was sitting on one of our osprey platforms, and I was hoping they would nest, but I didn't see them this summer, so they didn't nest this summer. But I believe they're around this area, and the people I've been seeing them here and there around the bay in winter, this winter, and especially up in Willow Lake, up in Flushing Meadow, that area. There's a pair that's been hanging out there every winter for years. Sooner or later, we're going to get a nesting bald eagle here. We already have them in Staten Island and out on Long Island. Some shorebirds that spend winter here, the dunlin. That's a winter photo of a dunlin on snow. This is what they look like in summertime. They used to be called a redback sandpiper, but they're easily identified. Long bill that droops at the end, and the black patch on the belly, at least in. And ruddy turnstones can be here in the wintertime. So while other birds migrate, most of them migrate, others take their place. So this is a black-bellied plover in winter plumage. And this is a true winter bird here, the purple sandpiper, taking a breezy point. Best place to see them is right on the jetty. And they're adapted to standing and climbing on all the slippery algae on the rocks there, which you couldn't walk on. So if you want to see a purple sandpiper, that's a good place to see them, right on the jetty. Here's a summer bird and winter bird, but now the double-crested cormorant, which breeds in Jamaica Bay, is replaced usually by the larger great cormorant, which comes from the north and comes down here. And they're easily identified this time of year by the white facial patch as opposed to the orangey here. But more and more of the double-crested cormorants are spending winter. So our winters are getting milder. Birds are staying here longer. There's the great cormorant. Usually you'll see them out closer to the inlet and not so much in the interior of the bay. In the more protected areas of the interior bay, you'll see the double-crested. And of course, the common bird of New York City, that what everybody calls a seagull, the herring gull, making a living by taking clams and mussels out of the bay. And you'll see them fly up, and then they'll drop them down, and they'll follow down with when they drop it. Because if they don't get down to the ground fast enough, there's a bird on the ground that will get it. So it's a tough life out there. And one of the largest gulls in the world, the great blackback gull, is also a predatory gull. I've seen them eat terns, whole juvenile terns. The beak, the head, the feathers, the legs, the whole thing. But they will dispatch a half-hardy bird in the bay. For example, the little ruddy ducks. One winter, there was some slush ice out here, and the wind was so strong, it was blowing the ruddy ducks up on the slush ice. The great blackback gulls were picking them up and dropping them like clams to kill them and eat them. And one ruddy duck went underneath my neighbor's dock. So I went out and I got him. I brought him in my house. I put him in the bathtub for the night. And about 3 in the morning, I said, I'm going to check on him, see how he's doing. I went in there. And he's sitting in the water. He's actually steaming. He's so warm. And he's hissing at me. So the cute little ducks are pretty pretty tough little animals. I let them go in open water the next day. A few of the land birds that we see in winter, the Northern Mockingbird, which years ago they were out here. First one I saw was in 1950 in Phoenix, Arizona. I'm visiting my aunt. This bird singing on top of a antenna with all these different songs. What is that? We didn't have them here. They extended their range northward and eastward, and now they're here even in the winter. And a good place to see them is right next to a big patch of Rosa multiflora. These are all the rose hips that will persist throughout winter, and that's how they survive winter. They will defend that shrub. American robins are here. We used to think of robin as a harbinger of spring. Not so. What's happening is these birds are really programmed to migrate. So the robins that are here in the summertime leave. They go down to Florida, wherever. They're replaced by robins that come from maybe up northern Canada, tree line, a little hardier species, subspecies or variety. And they'll come down and they'll spend winter here. And you'll find them trying to be in areas that are protected with lots of berry bushes. These are American hollies. And recently there was about 1,000 of these robins we saw flying overhead. This was out east. And they were flying westward at dusk, wave after wave. And my friend, a naturalist out there, Mike Bettini, said, because they're feeding on dense clusters of holly, which is a little bit east of here. And at the end of the day, they're going to roost somewhere. I thought it might have been just a late migration, but we'll see them in winter here at the refuge too. This one on the left, I photographed in 1982 on April 6th. April 6th, we had a late winter or early spring, a snowstorm, a foot of snow overnight. Robins, a lot of robins had migrated in from the south, the southern variety, and they were sitting on the snow dazed. So what happened, I had all these autumn olives. This is actually not native, but it does have abundant fruit that are edible. I had taken a bunch in the fall and I froze them in the refuge freezer. I took them out, thawed them out, I put them in the ruts made by the park vehicle, and all the robins came in to feed on them. So it was a tough time for them, but they got through. 2 days later, the snow was gone. This is American Goldfinch we see in winter. This is actually a summer photo though, which in the winter they're a lot drabber looking, but they'll come to feeders, but they'll also feed on any of the plants that have seeds. In this case, the sumac seeds and will persist in winter. Yellow-rumped warblers are here in the winter time. They migrate through, but many of them winter here. And what they feed on during tough times, if they can't get any insects, is a lot of the bayberries. This is a bayberry shrub, just laden with berries. This is at Breezy Point. And that's a good place to see them, right along the coast. I usually see them over there in Fort Tilden, even in January. The one on the left is the Carolina wren. Heard them singing yesterday. So one of the few birds to sing even in the wintertime, Carolina wren. And over here on the right is the little winter wren. Now these are photographs of Francois Portman. I don't know if you go on his website, he's a wonderful photographer, takes a lot of bird pictures. So here's the Carolina wren on the left, and a cute little winter wren on the right, tiny little thing, a little bigger than the kinglet. We can see the cedar waxwings in winter. Here's one by a multiflora rose shrub. But a true winter bird would be the common redpoll. This is one of Lisa's photographs upstate, but we do have a couple around the city now, and they'll come down. And of course, the cardinals are here in wintertime. They're another bird that extended their range northward. State bird of Virginia. But they weren't up here. Saw my first one in the 1950s. And I said, whoa, what is that bird? It was very uncommon back then. Now they're common. Why? Because people have been feeding them. It's estimated that about 40% of all households in Massachusetts at one point were feeding birds in winter. So some people say, oh, you shouldn't feed them. I say, easy for you to say. Maybe we shouldn't feed you. You know, I feed everything. I'm sorry. But I love to put seed out for them. And it's good. You can get to see them in winter, gets them through a tough time if there's a lot of snow on the ground. And that's the pretty female on the left of the cardinal and the male on the right. Other birds that will be attracted to feeders. The refuge used to have feeder out there. For some reason they took it away. I'm going to fight to get it back because, you know, you bring in a group there and you're not going to see anything half the time. It's a crummy day. You can look out the window at least and see some birds. This is a handsome fox sparrow. They're here in winter. White-crowned sparrows. Normally I don't see them here in winter. There's one hanging around somewhere, but I forget where I took this picture. But usually I see them in the springtime. More of a western bird that we see migrating through here. The white-throated sparrow is the native winter bird here. Now, these are the ones that are on top of Mount Washington. You used to go up to your heard. Old Sam Peabody, that was the song of the white-throated sparrow you'd hear up above tree line in the mountains. In the winter, they come down the slopes, they come down to the coastal area. Actually, they changed their tune recently. They don't sing the same song. Tree sparrows, another winter sparrow we don't see here in winter. And over here is Phragmites. People say, what good is Phragmites? They're always, hey, in urban areas, Phragmites is good because it's a great plant for uptaking any nutrient coming off roadways. They have a very big fibrous root system. I've seen muskrats feeding on the tubers, and I've seen the tree sparrows feeding on the seed heads of Phragmites. So they do have some uses. Where we have all these birds that feed is another place, you know, where there's the cardinal rule of nature, where there's something to eat, there'll be something there to eat it. Okay. And I can tell it with Alexander, who works for me. If I have something here to eat, she'll find it. But this is a Cooper's hawk. This is a male close up. Beautiful birds. These are the woodland bird hunting hawks. Chickadees, a common winter bird here. Not so common at the refuge. This year we're seeing a few, but more if you go into the bigger parks, you'll see them. I've been upstate, minus 20 degrees. I've seen chickadees out there singing their little song like it was nothing. On the right, snow buntings. We had another winter bird you might see in open fields. This one I photographed this is more of summer plumage, or transitional, at the airport in Iceland. As soon as I got off the plane, you would see snow buntings. This year is a good year to see the red crossbills. This the male on the right, female on the left, and they specialize in eating pine cone seeds. With that bill, able to pry open a closed pine cone and get the seeds out. So many years we don't see them. This is a good year to see them, both the red crossbill and even some of the white-winged crossbills. Some other birds, the one on the left, the yellow-bellied sapsucker. I just wrote an article for the next Urban Audubon on the yellow-bellied sapsucker, a good winter bird, and a bird that actually migrates. And many of the woodpeckers don't, but this one does. And they make those little either horizontal or vertical holes you'll see on trees. And that's important because it'll allow other birds, you know, maybe feeding in the winter, to feed on insects that are attracted, or in early spring, the morning cloak butterflies will go to it. Hummingbirds sometimes will follow them around, so they get the benefit from those holes in the sap. On the right is Jeff Kohlbrunner's, another great photographer we have here in the city, who's out there every day photographing birds. This is a brown creeper. This is a bird that flies to the base of a tree and climbs up a tree. So you'll see them, and they're not that common, but you'll see them in the winter in more of the wooded areas. Of course, the morning cloak, if it's a warm day in winter, temperatures reach 60 degrees. Some of the butterflies that overwinter as adults may come out to feed. So what's the feed on? There's not much for them to feed on. They might find a bruise on a tree or the sapsucker holes to feed. This is my dock. This is a fairly newcomer. This is the boat-tailed grackle. Boat-tailed grackles are more of a southern bird. And in early 80s, they started to show up on my dock here. And now this is one on the right, taken recently. In the wintertime, they come into Broad Channel. They hang out here. And they feed on whatever they can get. And at dusk, they go and they all congregate on the wires in Broad Channel before they head off to roost somewhere north of us. I'm going to move a little more quickly now here. Just the birds that people love to hate, the starling on the left. Right? Well, introduced here by a Shakespearean buff in 1880s. Wanted to introduce birds that were mentioned in Shakespeare's plays and works to New York City, Central Park. And when they finally took over, along with the little sparrows, they took over the whole country. So they're a problem, but I do like them. I respect them because they are survivors. You see those starlings on the side of a road in the puddle in midwinter bathing with a truck going by at 40 miles an hour, 5 feet from them. This is my cat, Princess, who runs the show here. And here she is. This is what I call Pussycat TV. These are all little house sparrows out there feeding. This is her entertainment for the day. I don't let her out when the birds are there. Not that she's going to catch one of these wary birds, but she likes to look at them. It's entertaining. You can see she's pretty content, just wagging her tail a little bit. Oh, no. A few other things before we end this show is some of the other things that can be seen here. Recent years, seals. This is a seal that I photographed 2 summers ago. Normally they're here only in the winter, but this guy was here in the summer. And I looked at him, cute little seal, but he had all these marks on his back. And I realized what happened to the seal, that a motor boat, the prop, must have come across and cut his back. They're all healed now, but that's what I think happened to him. That's why he was hanging around. But he's been with us for the past few years. This guy was in the bay, the Eastern Bay, last winter. Because look at all that blubber. They're well adapted to these waters. This is nothing for them. These are harbor seals. Then last winter, wow, I counted 11 seals hauled out on one of the islands at low tide. So harbor seals that 30 years ago, it was hard to see one in the bay. They're pretty rare. Now they're common. Why? Maybe the Clean Water Act, cleaner waters. So more fish species, more menhaden and things like that. These are eastern tent caterpillars, and they're adapted to living in this latitude because when they become a little nondescript moth in the summertime, which fly, mate, lay eggs, and they lay their eggs on the twigs, and the egg case is covered with a clear kind of almost look like plastic over it, but it contains glycerol. So these insects have glycerol in their system, so they don't freeze over the winter. So they're adapted to here. But this year I didn't see them. Some of our regular visitors here on the right, it's a hardy winter birder. I don't know his name, but I thought it was pretty hardy being out there in the snowstorm. On the left, I don't have time to give you the story of Dr. Tooth. This is back in the 70s and early 80s. He was an interesting guy. He looked fearsome, but he was a big pussycat. And he used to carry stones like Frankenstein on the trail, and people would scatter when they saw him. And he was putting them in the eye. I said, like, what are you doing? And he said, I'm closing up this portal to hell. If you stepped in that area, you would be sucked down into hell. I said, oh, geez, well, thank you. But we let him do it because he was creating some habitat for, snakes and chipmunks and things in an area. So you could put those stones over there. It's okay. No problem. A nice man, very gentle, but fearsome looking. Everybody's afraid of him. If you want to get close to birds, what I normally do this time of year, but not this year because of the pandemic, go down to Florida for a week to the Everglades. You get close to wildlife. I mean, they're right there, 2-3 feet away from you. You want to get good pictures? I recommend. It's the Galapagos of the U.S. here. Now, on the left is Anhinga Trail. Those are cormorants. The woman is photographing them, I guess getting headshots. They don't seem to have any problem. You're right next to them. And on the right is a little burrowing owl that's at the Brian Piccolo State Park, right next to the big ball field. And people are walking all right around next to him. So a good place to visit in wintertime if you can. And I'm hoping that next winter we'll be able to, I'd like to lead another trip down to the Everglades, one of my favorite places. These are some Jamaica Bay sunset shots, a great place to get late afternoon photos of sunsets. And there you have it, winter birds. I hope you enjoyed it.
Thanks, Don. That was really great. And we actually have plenty of time. So we actually have quite a few people on the line right now. Do you want to remove your screen share so we can get the tele view?
I'll take out the stop the share.
Yeah, there we go. Okay, we're all back now. Great. So quite a few comments.
You'll get a medal for staying with me.
Well, no, we're doing good. We had about 91 people still and 23 people on Facebook. And I have a
My
couple
sister
of
stayed.
questions. Yeah. So I have a couple questions coming in for you. Peggy asks, are the black ducks diminishing in numbers?
I believe so. Many species of waterfowl are diminishing, losing their breeding areas up in the great Midwest and pothole regions, or here as marshes get filled in. It could be a little bit of hunting pressure if they're not regulated enough, but I think they've declined somewhat. Many of the duck species have declined. Not so much the snow geese and brant geese. So geese seem to do well, but not a lot of duck species have declined, along with many other species of birds. I've read that it's estimated that we've lost in population size about 25% of the numbers of birds that we used to have. We no longer have.
All right. And then we have a question coming in from Sherry, Sherry, thank you for your message. I'll definitely be looking for your email. She wanted to know, she'd like to go birding at Breezy Point.
Yeah.
But she wants to know if she needs to have a fishing permit to be able to park there.
Not this time of year. You can go there during the daytime. I think it's only closed to vehicles from dusk till dawn fishing, but you can go to either the 195th Street parking lot or the 222nd Street parking area. And you can go right to those parking areas and park. You don't need a fishing permit this time of year, I believe. In the summer you do.
All right, cool.
But it's a great place just to hike around. If you have a nice day and it's not windy, Breezy Point is great. You'll see sanderlings and offshore ducks and things.
All right.
Maybe a snowy owl. It's a good place to see a snowy owl.
I still need to see one out there. Okay, and Annie, thank you for all of your comments. The two main ones she was asking was one about what you talked about jackrabbits. She wanted to know, where were the jackrabbits moved to, if at all? Do we know anything more about the jackrabbits?
The jackrabbits were either trapped out or shot out. I don't know what they did at the airport. They have a license that they can shoot wildlife if they feel it's a threat to, the human safety, aircraft safety. They don't like to do it, but they do it. The one year that they shot 3 snowy owls, it was brought to the attention of the New York Post, and the headline, the front page had "Bye Bye Birdie." That what it had? No, they had the snowy owl there with the crosshairs, and all those Harry Potter fans were so upset. They really called in or whatever they did. the Port Authority backed down immediately the same day. Said, we're not going to shoot them anymore. We're going to trap and relocate. So Chris Nadareski was put in charge of going over and relocating a lot of those owls that would end up at the airport. But snowy owls aren't endangered in any way. There's a good population of them. The black-tailed jackrabbits are for the most part gone. They might have trapped them all out, or they might have shot them out. But they didn't want them on the airport property because of their attractiveness to red-tailed hawks and snowy owls, things like that.
Gotcha. She's also asking, where can you find crossbills right now, aside from, I guess, Montauk?
A good place to find crossbills is anywhere you see pine trees, pine trees with pine cones. Fort Tilden might be good, Floyd Bennett Field, Jones Beach. Not big numbers as far as I know, but they're there. You'll find them.
Okay. People were, since you talked about Floyd Bennett Field, someone was asking, where's a good place to look for the snowy owls at Floyd Bennett Field?
Well, if they're there, and I've only seen them there when we had that big influx in 2012 in the big grassland areas. When you go into Floyd Bennett Field, you make your first left, you go all the way down, and you'll see the grasslands on your right. And you can just drive, next to, on the edge of those grasslands and look out, over the big open areas to look for them. But better than that is Jones Beach, West End too. You go there, park, look for the photographers, you'll find it. Or, walk around. There apparently were 3 of them there at one point. But they can show up in Jamaica Bay here, but they're not that common in the interior bay. They like those big open tundra-like habitats, which resembles with, the native area where they're from.
Cool. A few people were also asking 2 things. Where can people see the sapsuckers, and are there hummingbirds on the peninsula?
There are, in the summertime, we have breeding ruby-throated hummingbirds. That's another fairly recent nester at the refuge. We have at least 2, I think, that are nesting in the refuge area. Staten Island has them. They had them at the Floyd Bennett Field, but that's the common, it's actually the only species that you generally see here, the ruby-throated hummingbird. But you can see other species, even in winter. You might get different species of hummingbirds showing up. They can survive. Again, if they're, especially in association with the sapsuckers. Now, sapsuckers, a good place to see one of those would be Forest Park, maybe, or any of the big parks. We do see them at the refuge, but not commonly. Not commonly. They like areas with more trees.
That's great. All right. Well, we had a few people posting a few sightings that they've been seeing as well. Leslie Day said she saw a screech owl in Inwood Hill Park.
Okay, yes, they do nest there.
Cool. Yeah. And then I like Annie's comment. She said she has a mockingbird on her fire escape that has learned all the songs. They can mimic the other songbirds, ambulances, and red-tailed hawks.
Right. Well, they're one of the mimic thrushes. They can mimic other songs. They do it well. I mean, they'll fool you. You'll hear a perfect chickadee. Say, where's that chickadee? It's the mockingbird.
That's right. And we had another, I'll put in this as the final one, another final good comment from our friend in Egypt who was on earlier, Alfred. He said he has been seeing a lot of great cormorants in Egypt nowadays. So
Wow.
that was pretty neat.
Yeah, well, these are northern birds. I don't know if they're circumpolar, meaning they're in the northern areas and they come down in winter, in different hemispheres, or not hemispheres, but in different latitudes. But well, they might be another species in Egypt that looks similar. I'm not sure. I don't know about that.
All right. Well, Don, thank you so much. I think it's been clear that all the people that signed on really enjoyed your presentation. So yay, Don. This was great.
Thank you.
And for all of you still tuning in, I put into the chat information on how to rewatch this meeting. We had a bunch of latecomers, so it's going to be up indefinitely on our Littoral Society Facebook page for the Northeast chapter. and it will be up on our YouTube page. I'll also email that out to everyone who registered today, in case you wanted to catch this presentation again in the future.
Also, I'm doing a program. If you're a member of New York City Audubon, I'm doing a program on Wednesday, next Wednesday, the 27th, on Jamaica Bay. Be like a tour of Jamaica Bay, not focusing only on birds, but on everything, on habitats, on issues, on managing scenarios, and so on. So,
Great. All right. And that people can catch that on the New York City Audubon website?
yes,
Okay. So
I
people.
think you have to be a member. You could, but maybe not. Maybe
All
get it.
right. Sounds good. Well, everyone, thank you for joining. And
Oh,
this-
hi, great seeing all you people that I know out there. That would, hi, Shari, I see Shari there. I haven't seen you. in a
Thank you,
while.
Don.
And my pleasure, my pleasure.
Bye, Donald.
Let's
Bye.
get through this winter.
Yeah.
And
I hope so.
all you people who are over 65, there must be a couple of you out there. Get your shot. You know, I got my first shot.
Great,
God,
great.
I don't know if there'll be anything left for me to get the second shot, but you know.
Well, that's
It's not
to
the one.
start.
Don, can I ask one last burning question?
Yes, ma'am.
It's Sherry.
Yeah, I see.
Mitch and I want, this is the most important question. How is it that you are ageless? You never age. You're the same as we've known
20
you
years
for
ago, you
20
looked the same.
years.
It's easy. I sold my soul to the devil. No, you know what it is? I'll tell you what it is. My mother lived to be 106 and a half.
Wow,
Wow.
I have her genes. I exercise regularly.
that's good.
I kind of watch my diet. I try to eat well, good foods, try to get enough sleep,
Mhm.
and I drink a little bit of red wine.
Red one, yeah, just a little.
You know, a glass or two of red wine with your meals might reduce the stress of the day, might help you.
Hmm.
Other than that, it's luck.
Well,
I'm a firm believer in exercise. You know, I've always all my life,
We'll look the same.
get out, hike around, get out, keep moving, keep the right attitude. Hopefully get through this winter, get back to some sense of normalcy,
Mhm.
see
absolutely.
each other in person. So,
Yeah.
oh, one other thing I mentioned, I was reading this week, because we have these new variants that might be showing up. They're starting
Oh,
to come
right.
down. It might be good to double mask.
I heard
I'm
that.
going
today.
into a store shopping. I put 2 masks on now, just to be safe.
Yeah.
And
Mm.
6 feet distance, I made that 10 feet. Tried it,
Good
know,
idea.
but get out. Yeah, I go to the refuge, especially during the week. There's nobody there.
It's perfect. It's
Mm.
really
Perfect.
great.
Get out in the woods and walk around and read a lot and try to keep a good attitude. I mean, it's horrible, I know.
Mm.
But hope is there.
Yep.
We have a new man in Washington.
Mhm.
Hopefully,
Yeah, we're getting there.
hopefully they take the pandemic a lot more serious.
Yeah.
Hi, Cookie. See Cookie over there.
Well,
Yeah, she was
we've
Beauty.
seen Dr. Fauci, and he
Yeah.
is definitely brilliant now with the new
Yes.
administration in.
He looks
Fauci,
so much-
He's
like,
smiling. Yeah.
yes,
You know, you have to listen to the doctors, to the scientists. You know, what are we gonna listen to a politician? Come on. You know, they know that but take care of yourselves, right? You know,
too, Don.
it's
You
not-
too,
All
Don.
right, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay,
bless
Thank
you.
you.
bye, everybody.
Soon. I'll be signing out.
Bye.
Thank you. Goodbye. Greeting from Egypt. Goodbye.
Bye, Alfred.